Hi, and welcome to the OpenMindShow.com. Today we're going to be interviewing the host of this series of podcasts, Anita Burns. I've known Anita for many, many, many years. That's three manys.
Three manys.
Is that too many? No, that's three many.
That's three many.
Okay. So, hi, Anita.
Hi.
You have an extensive background in metaphysics and spirituality. In addition to being very serious.
At least you didn't say I have an extensive backside.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm not suicidal. So, tell us something about how you got to be where you are today in your metaphysical background.
True. How many hours do we have?
Well, just pretend there's a plate of pork chops here in front of us.
Well, I was always strange. I was born, fortunately, born into a family, well, not a family, but with a mother who was psychic, talked to spirits, very open, very spiritual. And she encouraged what I think most children have, and that is very open mind towards spirit and psychic things and subtle energies. And she just never discouraged me. And so I thought I was normal until I started talking to other children and found out that, well, maybe their parents were saying, oh, it was their imagination, or they were lying or whatever. And so the children just sort of shut up about it. I never had to do that. I remember my first, well, I don't know if it was my first or not, but the first metaphysical experience I remember, it was about, I think I was 4, maybe 5 years old, I think this was in Spokane, Washington. I was standing on the couch, facing out the window, leaning up against the back of the couch, and all of a sudden I found myself out in space looking back at the Earth. Now, this was in 1915, and we hadn't gone out into space. We didn't have any satellites up, and no one knew what the Earth really looked like from outside of its atmosphere. And I saw this beautiful, like, blue marble, or in a movie I saw once called I think it was called The Astronaut. It's a big blueberry. And it did. It looked like it was just beautiful and luminescent, and with the white clouds. And then I think my mother called me, and suddenly I was back to where I was. And then later, when we did go out into space, I saw the picture of the Earth, and I went, wow, that's what I saw as a child.
Did you talk to your mother about that?
I don't remember if I did or not. I'm not sure. And then, of course, my mother being a metaphysical, we had a lot of spirits in the house, and one encounter that I recall very vividly was I was playing on the floor with, I don't know, dolls or something, a coloring book, I'm not sure what. And I looked up, and standing in the doorway to the hallway was a tall man with bright red hair and a red handlebar mustache. Sort of a leopard skin costume on. They had one shoulder, and then it was kind of ragged, and they had sandals that laced up to his knees, like a Victorian weightlifter, circus weightlifter. And I just said, hi, and he kind of looked at me, and I don't even remember if he said anything back, but then somebody slammed the door and came back in, and he disappeared.
So you knew he wasn't really in town with a circus.
Right. I knew he was. I didn't really have the name for ghost or spirit in those days, but I knew that he was someone who had died and was there for some reason. Now, the building we lived in was very old. It was an old house that had been split into a duplex. So, I've had tons and tons and tons of experiences that, to me, proved that this was not the only awareness or existence that we had. And then, of course, when we moved back to California, I remember, I moved to California when I was about, I guess, 6 or 7 years old. I'm not really sure. Like I said, I had time dyslexia. I remember that every night I would leave my body and go flying around the neighborhood and have fun and play with other kids out there, and they were also flying around. And my mother explained to me, after I nearly killed myself jumping off a big cinder block wall to prove to my neighbor that I could really fly. She explained to me that there's a difference between, I think she called it the soul, she didn't use the word astral in those days, and the body, and that the soul lives in the body, and that when we're asleep, the soul can leave the body and go and do things. And so then I kept my mouth shut about it, about being able to really fly. I've had past memories of past lives ever since I was small. I was always psychic. I always knew who had been at the door, what mail was going to come, who was on the telephone when we had a telephone, which wasn't always.
Now, if you fast forward a little bit, when you were a teenager in high school, you joined the church.
Well, yes, I joined the Episcopal Church, St. Paul's Episcopal Church in downtown Los Angeles, because I was in love with a choir boy. And I remember telling myself that it was a lovely service, and I was president of the youth group, and I really enjoyed myself there, but I had other beliefs. They didn't, at that time, contradict what I was hearing in the church, but I said in one church service, if they never mention anything about reincarnation or out-of-body flights or psychic ability, then it's okay. And they didn't mention it once.
Not publicly.
Not publicly. And later on, I was even a Sunday school teacher for a short period of time, but I think that was in the 60s or 70s. It was in the 70s. And the other ladies in the church didn't approve of my short skirts. So.
I see. Well, too bad for the ladies.
Yeah. So that didn't last long. And then in my 20s, I kind of put it on the back burner as I partied hard. Partied hardy from 18 to about 26, I guess. But it never really went away, and then I decided to take it up as a profession.
Okay. Now, it seems to me as we've talked, you had an important experience studying the Rosicrucian lessons on astrology. What happened then? What was that about, and what did that do for you?
Well, I studied the Rosicrucians philosophy course first when I was 18. And this is the Rosicrucians based in Oceanside, founded by Max Heindel, not the Rosicrucians in San Jose. And people get them mixed up, but they're completely separate. They don't even have the same beliefs. And it sort of opened my mind to a lot of other possibilities. Answered some questions. It was a big wow for me. It was one of the first times I remember having an alternate explanation for Christianity and what is in the Christian Bible. That, for example, the disciples of Jesus were not real people, but were I don't know what I'm trying to think of the word now, but they were
metaphors.
Metaphors. Thank you. Metaphors for the astrological signs. And it just fit like a glove for me that, wow, that Jesus was the central force for this metaphor of astrology. And there were a lot of other things in there that just made so much sense to me. And so then I went on to study their astrology course. And that's when I discovered how incredibly self-evident astrology is, even though there's no scientific evidence of it being effective in any way, and it doesn't make any logical sense at all. But it does. I mean, I don't care who says they've had any kind of study that it doesn't work. That's bullshit, excuse me. It does. It does work. It doesn't compel, it's not fatalistic, but it is an in-depth portrait of who we are at all levels. And of course, we make our decisions from who we are. And that will drive our life.
And you became quite an accomplished astrologer.
Mm.
And have even written a home study course.
I have a home study course in astrology, and it can be ordered from my website, metastudies.com. Shameless commerce here. It's a course of 30 lessons. It took me years to write this. And I started it because at the time I wrote it, and it's been out for quite a long time, and I have students all over the world. But at the time, there were no home study courses for astrology. I won't say there were none. There were a few, and I looked at them, and they were just bogus. They were just horrible for the ones I saw, and I won't mention which ones. I couldn't find one that was, complete or anything, so I just decided to write one.
And easily understandable.
And that was it. A lot of them are so complex and so confusing, and you have to be a mathematician. I've had students write to me saying, "Thank you so much, because I finally understand. This is written in a way that is easy to understand, step by step, building one on the other." And of course, my training in neurolinguistic programming helped me write it, because I know how people can learn, and so that it goes in more easily and understandable.
Right. Now, you're quite accomplished as a teacher and a writer.
Mm.
You teach NLP.
With you.
With me. You do hypnosis training.
I do. I haven't done hypnosis training in a long time because I came to the conclusion I can't do everything that I want to do in one lifetime.
Right, but you teach tarot. You're an excellent tarot teacher. You channel. You're an accomplished channeler. You do tremendous readings for people. And you also, with your husband Alan, have
cameraman,
the tech guy who does everything and everything well, have developed a new process. Alan has brought a wonderful new process back to the spiritual world called Rehutek. And you've been involved with him in the development of that as well.
That's been quite a journey.
I imagine it has been.
Yeah.
Alan is also quite an accomplished healer.
I'm going to try to get him on the show sometime.
I think you should do that.
Yeah.
So, what is it that makes you want to produce this series of programs?
That's a good question. I don't really have an answer for it, other than it's just something I woke up one morning and a voice in me said, "You have to do this. This is something that is important to do." And I love giving people that, again, in my never to be humble opinion, who are talented, gifted, interesting, have something to say that I think would benefit others. I love giving a stage for that, for people to have their say and to maybe touch someone else's life with their message.
And you bring an interesting perspective to it too, in addition to your role as a therapist. You bring your spiritual tradition with you, and you have an extensive spiritual tradition from the East as well that you rely on.
And I'm not really sure why or how that happened, but somehow my life, just step by step, my learning path went along the lines of India. And I've always been attracted to not so much fundamentalist Hinduism, but Indian spirituality. I guess it was early on that I had exposure to it, and their belief in reincarnation, not like transmigration, like we come back as rats or mice or whatever, but that there is a learning process, that it is a growth process, that each life is somehow bigger, better, deeper, more awareness, that we stumble and we fall and we don't learn our lessons always, but it's always a progress up the mountain. And that attracted me. Because it never made any sense that we only have one time around to get it right, And the other thing that attracted me about it was when I learned that the polytheistic facade that Hinduism has in the deeper teachings is really monotheistic, that God has many faces, and that God is not outside of us, that it's a force that lives within us and expresses in many ways. It's kind of like, the teachings of The Secret. It's what we think, it's how we express, it's the energy we put out, and so on.
Who are some of the teachers?
Oh, some of the teachers I had. Wow. Well, I had one teacher. I learned from many teachers from the East. Muktananda was perhaps one of the early influences. Satya Sai Baba, Meher Baba, Keshavadas, and then I had an opportunity to take a course from a man who at that time was called Guruji. He's since, I guess, moved up in the ranks, and now he's Baba Sri Shiva, I think. But I had a chance in his early days of teaching in the West to take a course in what he called Siddha Yoga, or Siddhi Yoga, which is Muktananda's was Siddha, his is Siddhi Yoga. And it was very, very interesting and taught me a lot about looking inside and exposing, not being afraid to expose those dark, bruised areas of my soul, and to examine them bravely and determinedly, and to transform that energy. And I have to say that a lot of the people in the class or in the group didn't have an easy job of it, but because of my NLP training, I had other skills that I could bring to the party. A lot of the things that he taught me, I didn't quite fit for me. So, but I knew that he had a key for me, and he really did. This is a man who, being in his presence, for me anyway, just sort of wiped my slate clean. I mean, I felt energized, I felt clear, I felt stronger after being in his presence for a little while. And then, I took the course, and a lot of the people in the group followed him to the next stage, but my life took a different turn, and I haven't seen him in a while. I'm still on his email list, and I get stuff about where he's going to be and stuff. But I think it was just one of those things that I had to take the piece and move on. Kind of like you, where you take a little here and a little there, right, and then you move on, not really following any particular path.
And that's the comment that I was going to make. It seems like your life, for as far back as you can remember, has been about spiritual experiences and learning as much as you could, having a very wide range of interests in spiritual teachings, and also just very talented in your ability to teach and what you teach because you've experienced it. You're not teaching what you think people want to know. You're teaching people out of your experience.
Oh, yeah.
And from your skepticism at times, as well as your belief, which I think brings a great balance to it.
Oddly enough, I'm a big skeptic.
Right. So what do we have to look forward to in these shows? Who are you going to have? And
well, it's just, I'm sort of taking it as it comes along. People come to mind, or I meet someone and I think, wow, that person is really interesting, or I think that person would have a lot to say or a lot to offer, and just asking them if they'll be on the show. Of course I'm going to have everybody I know, because I know so many fascinating people, and why not? I mean, why wouldn't I have these people on? Because I know so many incredible people. I want one person, for example, I'm going to try to schedule very soon is Barbara Lamb, who is one of my favorite people. She's an expert in crop circles and ETs, and as you know, I've had incredible ET experiences since I was a child.
And she's a therapist.
She has an encounter group. There's my old training.
Right. I remember those.
A circle of people who have had abductee experiences and where they can talk freely about them, and just all sorts of interesting folk.
Cher Starwas is a
Cher
great
Starwas, yes, an extraordinary psychic, tarot reader, and just an incredibly colorful person. Interesting. She just sort of, she walks in a room and for me, the room just lights up and sparkles. You know, I just have a whole list of people, and hopefully it will grow.
Well, I think it's a very interesting concept, and I think that you're really going to enjoy the programs that Anita brings you in the future. So remember to look for the openmindshow.com and Anita Burns and her guests. So thank you, Anita, for sharing your life and your dreams with us.
Thank you.